Well, this is so sad. Hi friends, welcome to the Aeroponic Tower channel. Today we are going to do a January garden tour. What's growing on the towers in January 2024. I'm going to show you guys my starts, and we're going to problem solve some things, and we're going to talk about some of my failures. I have found on these garden tours, it's a great opportunity to answer a lot of your questions because we have so much going on. We have so many different foods at so many stages, different things growing in different places. I get that question all the time. Where should I put things? And I don't have set rules for that. And I've talked about that in my past videos. Because I'm interval planting, sometimes I'm putting things just where I can put them and then moving them in time. But you'll be able to see what do I have growing on my baby greens extension kit, because that's what I grow in the baby greens extension kit. And then we're just gonna walk through like all of this food. There's so much food. I just ate like a handful of green beans and peas, and there's just so much abundance. So I find that these tours give us the opportunity to cover a lot of information. So it may be a video where you want to clean your kitchen and just listen in the background because it is going to be a lot of talking, or you might want to grab a pen and a notebook if you are curious about some things and want to take notes on some of this information. I would like to get timestamps on my videos, but I haven't figured out how to do that yet. I'm still new to this whole content creation thing, so hopefully someday I will figure that out. But for now, we're just gonna dive in. I'm going to show you guys everything. We're gonna talk through the problems. We're gonna look at things I did well and things I didn't do well, because I'm sure you've done them yourself, or if you haven't, you may eventually, and cover all the things. So let's go. And the really cool thing is it's snowing outside. There's snow on the ground outside. It's really cold, but I'm in this garage growing an abundance of food. We have so much food to harvest. I'm gonna do a big juice haul today, and that's incredible. It really is incredible that I can replace the grocery store and I can have fresh food in January. So let me address the first question, because I do get this one quite a bit this time of year, and that is, how do you heat your space? And more importantly, how can you heat your space? So we are in a garage. This is a mechanic's garage, and this was a diesel mechanic's garage. We have chosen not to put cars in our garage. We use it for our gym and for growing food and for other things because we have a smaller cabin and need that extra space for our family. We used this as an office for a while when we had our other home business, and so we have a mini split in here. So I can run a standard heater in here. You don't need something that high tech to grow in the towers. If you want to grow in the basement or the garage, you can get small plug-in electric heaters and put them near your towers. If I were to do that in this space, I would probably put one in between every 2 towers. So right in the middle here, one over there, and so forth. They put off a lot of heat. We actually still use those in our home. Our basement tends to stay really cold, and they do a great job of heating up a space. And you can also put heaters in your tanks. I have heaters in, I think, 2 or 3 of my tanks right now for my warm weather crops, because it is still pretty cold in here because it's such a big garage and the ceilings are so high, it doesn't hold heat very well. I'm barefoot right now, and my feet are freezing. I enjoy it though. I feel like I'm grounding even if I'm not outside. And I know because the towers are sitting on this cold concrete floor, the water tends to stay pretty cold as well. And the air's colder, and when you're trickling water and it's exposed to air, it's gonna cool and keep the water cooler. Anyway, that's how we used to cool our pool in Florida. We had some fountains, so at night they would come on and it would expose the water to air, which would cool it and make the whole pool cooler. So that's what's going on here. So having those tank heaters for your warm weather crops, or if your garage or wherever you want to grow is super cold, that's a great trick too. That keeps everything nice and warm and really happy. Another issue, or another question I get quite often, is can you move your tower indoor and out based on the weather? And I'm going to say no. I have found when people are moving their towers around, if they're going inside and outside, if you're putting them in a garage and then taking them outside, it causes problems with the plants. Very high fail rate when people are fussing with their towers like that. The best thing to do is decide where you want to grow your food. If it's in the winter and you want to grow indoors, grow your food indoors in the winter. Put it in the spot you want to grow it. Get some heat on it. Leave it alone. We want to be managing our plants, but we don't want to fuss with the towers. We don't want to be moving them inside and outside into a window and away from a window. It's best just to get them set up and leave it alone. Fussing with these to death causes more problems than just leaving them alone. Same goes with the pH. I don't ever check my pH. We can do that today. Actually, I'm curious to see what it is. I don't ever check my pH. I've never checked the pH of these towers since they've been in this garage. Except for this one back here, because I have a tomato that's had curled leaves forever. Still growing, starting to produce fruit. It just has curled leaves. I don't know if it just is this particular variety doesn't like hydroponics. I'm not sure. I'm taking notes, and I will give you guys all my best practices once I get this tomato tower to the fruiting stage, gather all that data for you for all these different varieties. But I did check the pH on that one. But what I often see is people will check the pH and then fuss with it and then not wait long enough before they check it again and fuss with it more, and then it kind of gets off. And then that can throw your pH off, and it can throw the amount of nutrients off you have in your tower. The pH staying in the 5 to 7 range is what I like to be in. I like to have it at 5.5, and I've gotten good at knowing how much to put in to get it to that. But overall, I don't mess with the pH. We're gonna check it today because I'm curious. And maybe some of them are high, maybe some of them are low. I only check it when I notice there's something going on with my plants and something looks off. Is that best practice? Probably not. You know, pH is important, but it's not as important as I think it's talked about sometimes in the tower gardening world. For me anyway, my experience has been, doesn't really matter. What I find matters the most is starting new seeds frequently, turning your plants over, harvesting things, eating off your towers, repeating the process over and over and over again, right? So we're gonna dive in and talk about that as we go along. So let's just discuss this first. When your starts get really big, they can dry out really quickly because they're on a heat mat. So you're gonna notice I have some starts sitting at the rim of some of my towers. That is because they were just drying out too quickly, and I have been slow to get these other 2 towers going, and you know, such is life. So this one dried out, and if you look, this is arugula. There's a ladybug. I heavily seed these. I have shared how I do that in the past. And these I actually poured seeds over the entire rock wool, and they just dried out quickly because that's a lot of food in a small space, and I didn't come in here for over 24 hours. If you're growing like this, make sure you're checking on your seedlings daily because they do dry out when you have a lot of food in them. For these, they're drying out quickly because we have so many greens here. And then for these, they were drying out quickly because they're very large. These are large plants. They need to go into the tower at this point. Now, this is not a complete loss. I may lose this one here that looks really rough, but the rest will perk back up. Arugula is pretty forgiving, so we have that going for us. And even over here, they've already started to perk up, but definitely keep a close eye because we're keeping them on the heat mat. We do that because they grow faster on the heat mat, and that's the goal. We want fast growth. You have to water them, and we have to water them properly. So I'm going to show you some that I watered not so properly. And what really happened for me is I have a lot of starts going at the same time, way more than I typically start because I've got these 2 towers I need to fill up, plus I need to keep rotating food out of these. And I just got neglectful because there were too many to put eyes on. All right, so here I have 2 different plants, and both are ready to go in. These are bigger because these are larger plants. These are smaller. I planted these at the same time. This is a purple bok choy, purple lady bok choy. It's a smaller plant, so it's just gonna be smaller. These are turnips and some buckwheat, and they're bigger. And I'm heavily seeded. I did 3 to 5 seeds of my turnips per rock wool. Turnip greens are incredibly healthy. Definitely great to have in your diet. So what happened And then these Purple Lady Bok Choy. I tried to get 3 per rock wool. I've got 4 in one, 4, and then I did some singles. And I remember planting those with you guys and talking about how I was going to try to see if I liked growing 1 per rock wool or 3. Over the summer I was doing 3 per rock wool and I really enjoyed that. And then some of them didn't pop up at all. That happens. Here is where I went wrong with this one. And I had a friend mention that her seedlings take so long that they end up dying on the grow station. So that is a problem. Your seedlings shouldn't be dying on your grow station. If we're watering them properly, they do take a long time. This is 5 weeks of growth, right? We've been going for a long time with these. This is 3 weeks of growth. These are baby greens These are baby greens that I heavily seed, and I've showed how to do that before. If they're dying on your grow station, we're letting them dry out or we're giving them too much water. It may be if you have a hard time managing the water content because of the heat mat, you can pull them off the heat mat and maybe just keep them on when you feel like you can manage it. The heat mat is going to cause them to grow faster, which is why we want to use the heat mat. Heat just promotes faster growth. That's why things grow faster in the spring and in the summer. So having that extra heat on them makes a difference there. But if you can't manage them well because you're just busy in life, take them off the heat mat. It's better to do that. And you can even stick them on the rim if you wanted. I like them under the grow lights much better, but that's always an option to avoid losing your seedlings. Now, what happened with this one is you see all that green algae? Green algae is normal in hydroponics, and it's a side effect, but it doesn't have to be this bad. There's some tricks I'm working on, and I'll share those once I master them, for preventing it a little bit more. You're not going to see it if you buy seedlings from a greenhouse grower for your tower garden. You won't see this kind of stuff as much because they're growing them in a greenhouse outside, and they're growing faster because they have the sun and the heat. But when we're growing indoors, this is common in hydroponics, but this amount is not common. What we want to see, again, I said these are the same age. I started these at the same time, and we don't have algae on these. Can you guys see that? Here we have a little bit, but nowhere near what's going on with that other one. The reason is I let these get pretty dry and then watered them thoroughly and dumped out any excess water. This one, I did not do that, and I found it sitting in water, and it was like icky mess on the top. I just couldn't see these very well. They were kind of tucked in the back, so I kept watering them and watered them too much because they're smaller and not all of them germinated. So they didn't need all that water. Watering them properly is key. And that means you have to check on them every day as they get bigger because they can dry out really quickly. But you're going for fully soaked, but not dripping. And then by the end, when you go to water them again, they should be pretty dry to the touch. I just watered these recently, so these aren't even as dry as I would let them get. So, and then you can see, and then the other reason we get algae, you can see this one doesn't have hardly any. It's just time. Nutrients and water and light are going to grow algae. It's completely harmless. It's just a side effect of all hydroponics. The ones, these that were overwatered, have a lot of surface area that's been exposed to light because it's a small plant and some didn't germinate. These are green beans. They popped up really quickly. They're ready to go into the tower. I've got some peas over there too. They don't have the algae because they've only been growing for about 5 days. No, they've only been growing for about a week. It's not the same exposure. So my peppers, and I've highly neglected my peppers too, they have a lot of algae on them because they've been growing for a long time. There's a lot of exposure to light because they don't take up much space in here. And so they're gonna have more algae. They still have less than the purple ones because I watered these properly. Okay, next thing I wanna discuss is not having food to eat. This one right here, the not having food to eat, if you want to harvest a lot of food, especially greens, off your tower, you have to be planting your seeds every 2 weeks. You have to heavily seed them like I've shared in the past. And then you have to harvest them off your tower and replace them. And you have to do it often. That is the key. And I have found that that is kind of hard for people to do. I don't know if it's just because it's not a practice. I think maybe it's not in the normal routine or the normal practice of doing that. So maybe it feels a little bit foreign. So this is what keeps you fed. It's what keeps us fed. And I'm going to show you one that I'm going to harvest off the tower today, and I'm going to replace it with this. And doing this every 2 weeks. Right now these need a home, so I need to go to my baby greens extension kit and find however many are in here of things I need to eat so I can put these in. So that is the key too. Now some on this side are smaller on the outer sides. So I'm going to give them a little longer. So I'm probably only going to put 4 in because I don't want to harvest that much food today because that would be too much food to eat. But this is the secret to having food to eat. Start these seedlings every 2 weeks. Heavily seed them and then make sure to harvest the whole plant and replace it. So we'll start some of these seeds together because I'm at that 2-week mark and I need to get some going. When do we harvest our baby greens? I've gotten that question before. My answer is when your starts are ready to go in and you need a place to put them. And if we're doing this every 2 weeks, it should line up pretty good. Ooh, there's cilantro. Yay! There's that celery. Oh, those may actually be celery, which means I have more celery for my celery juicing tower. Okay, so here's the baby greens bundle. This was one of these. Same thing. These are the same plants, same everything. This one's a little bit smaller than they grow when I'm growing outside. When I'm growing outside, they get bigger, they get fuller. Just that's the nature of growing outside. When we're growing inside, we're going to get a little bit smaller harvest like this one. But this one's ready to come out, and I know it's ready because I need to put new starts in. This could get bigger, especially if I gave it its own grow port. It would get nice and thick and could quadruple in size because all of this will turn into mature lettuce the more I let it grow. But I want food on the table, and so we're gonna harvest this one and eat it. Now, because this is smaller and we're growing inside, ideally, I would wanna be able to harvest 3 or 4 of these to make a big salad for my family, and then I could come and add other things like Swiss chard and beet greens, and I've got some mizuna and mabuna, and I can take some leaves and some tatsoi. I can take leaves from some of those other plants to add different, and kale, to add different, and mustards, to add different, sorry, I get sidetracked, to add different textures and different flavors and to make this a really big salad. And I can do all that with one tower, right? Everything I just mentioned is on this tower. So I can take all of that off this tower to make this heartier. And because these are already pretty large, I'm gonna put them in where I take these out. And these are gonna be ready in just a couple of weeks. So this one's ready to harvest. We're gonna pick another one. We're gonna put these in there. These are gonna be ready in 2 to 3 weeks. I have some already in here that are maturing that should be ready next week. And that's how we keep interval planting and make sure we have food to harvest frequently. Here's our second bundle. Look at how gorgeous that one is. There's butter lettuce in there. There's red lettuce. Ooh, that one looks really good. Okay, and over here I have some seeded Samson, I think it's called. It's a leaf lettuce. I'm growing a lot of this right now. I really like it. Gives you all these baby greens, and it's a regular head of lettuce. But and this is Salanova lettuce right here. This is a butter Salanova. And so Salanova is a mature head of lettuce that creates baby size leaves. And instead of a small amount of leaves like a regular salad's gonna give you, it gives, I think, 3 times the amount. It's a large amount, but it's all these baby greens. But salad doesn't like to be jammed up. Lettuce doesn't like to be jammed up like this if you want it to get big. When we're growing our baby greens, totally fine. We need to max this out. But if I want this to be its own giant head of lettuce, I really need to put it in a standard grow port and give it space. I have it here because I'm not really concerned about it getting that big. I'm going to eat it, not today, but maybe another 2 weeks, it'll double in size and I will eat it then. But just know, like if you want a large Salanova head of lettuce, you can plant 2 seeds per rock wool and give it its own grow port, and that gives you more food than if you keep it in the baby greens extension kit here and it gets a little jammed up. It just forces lettuce to stay a little bit smaller when we grow it this way. So those are just some things I wanted to cover as far as problem solving and making sure like we understand what I'm talking about when I'm heavily seeding and starting these frequently, and why and what that looks like. Now let's go take a tour and just talk about everything going on with the towers and everything that's on them. And look at this, like this, I'm actually starving. If you have bad leaves in here, just pick them out. I like to do it before I bring it in the house so I can wash these and get them crispy, ready to eat. I have gotten that question too about lettuce not being crispy. These are baby greens and a lot of these are softer varieties, so they're going to be more tender. If you want super crisp lettuce, something like this Samson is crispier. The Salanova is thicker, more kale-like. You can grow some crispini. I have some varieties. I have a variety right here called crispini that's just way crisper by nature. So you need to choose the varieties of lettuce that you like. These are all done with sprouting seeds, as I mentioned before. And look at all this lettuce we have to put in. I actually did a huge lettuce harvest recently. That's why there's not a ton on the tower, but I replaced it all with baby greens. All right, before we get started, I'm going to show you guys my starts. And as I mentioned, I have them, you're going to see them on the rims of things because I just have a lot going right now. But there they are. Things aren't dying, but sometimes things struggle and we have to pay attention to that. Like these, the coloring on that is not good. That tells me these need more nutrients really quickly. I forget what these are. So I have a choice. I can put them in the tower now because they are showing signs and they're pretty big. Let's look at the root structure. Yeah, we've got roots. I don't know if you guys can see that on all sides. Not a ton, but we do have roots on all sides, and these are showing signs of stress. So they need to go into the tower because they are lacking color, even though I'm feeding them nutrient water. They're just not getting enough. We've got some wheatgrass growing. Back there is cilantro. These are just some remnants that weren't great. Back there is baby cauliflower and some standard lettuce, more arugula. These are my celery. Celery takes a really, really long time. So they're super tiny and they're starting to get their real leaves. So that's good news. Not these. This is a pink Chinese celery and it hasn't gotten its real leaves. And then I don't know what these are, but they are super cute. I don't know if you guys can see that. Sorry, the lighting's bad. They're like fuzzy little leaves. And whatever it is that came up, it didn't come up in that one, but it did come up in this one. So excited about those, whatever they are. These are some extra lettuce from another thing. Everything needs a home. We're getting to the point where I'm seeing stress Some things aren't looking great. We've got discoloration. We've got lots of algae buildup. It's time. These are not ready. I have to just keep tending to these, but everything that's pretty big and close to having roots on all 5 sides is going in the towers today. This tower right here is my celery juicing tower, and I still haven't put the lights on it, so I've just been sharing lights, and everything has bounced back and done really well. Some of them, like this one that's turned down, it's not because it's, why is that? Huh. This one's not getting water. So I noticed this was kind of floppy. There's no water going to this. So something is a little bit off calibrated. And I can't fix that with one hand. So I just need to make sure the tower's level so that this is getting water. That tends to happen every once in a while. So if you notice that, that might be what's going on. The rest of these perked back up great. They recovered well and are doing good. Here's one where we lost one little leaf, but it's bounced back. Everything's doing great. Towards the top, I went ahead and put my wheatgrass in here because I don't have celery starts at the moment to take those, and I'm on a big wheatgrass kick. That's a different video. You can cut your wheatgrass once and let it regrow. And I cut my rockwool and opened the hole to add extra wheatgrass to make sure you get enough that you can actually juice it. So I've just got some random things. My chijimusai, I put some of that in there to fill up the top of this tower until it's all celery. Over here is a bok choy. I forget the name of this variety. I'll put it up. I'll put it up top. It's doing great. These get really big, and I really enjoyed growing them indoors last year. I did 3 per rockwool. They do well, multi-seeded. Actually, I did 4 per rockwool. Nope, 3. And they do really well. They get really big, absolutely delicious. I've got a mixture of some sort of baby greens. This is going to be a heartier blend. This is lettuce, but we've also got some kale and looks like some mustards. So just a variety. Which will give you different textures like I mentioned before. Over here we have stinging nettle, still growing strong. These right here are cabbage greens. I multi-seeded them so I could get big cabbage leaves to use in recipes. They are doing amazing. Down here is my Swiss chard. Look at these. Like, they get so meaty and like big stems. So the more you eat off of them, they just get really thick like this. So I need to start a new one. It's why I like to do 1 seed per rockwool when I'm growing indoors with Swiss chard. But I grew these as baby greens and I just have been eating off of them and never took it out. So that's what happens when you multi-seed them. And you can harvest these whole things. Look at that. Such a great bouquet meal. But if you want big leaves for juicing, just do 1 seed per rockwool. Back here's my purple cabbage, seeded the same as the green cabbage, heavily seeded so that I can have the leaves. These are some turnips, just put those in. My Napa cabbage, all of them are struggling. Most of them are struggling. This is a Merlot. Napa, these were grown outdoors and then transitioned indoors. The color is incredible, but they're just not taking shape and not wonderful. I'm not giving up on this one yet, but definitely better to just, this is another one. This is not great. So I just learned not transitioning that food is the best. Up here we have radish. All right, and these tours are so hard because this camera does not like to focus, but in here we have radish. I'm gonna harvest some of that today. Most of them have 2 to 3 per rockwool, which is ideal because you wanna get the most out of each grow port. I have a dead lettuce. No idea why this didn't survive. It's got moisture. The roots look good. It just didn't survive. Sometimes that happens. So we're not gonna fuss over it. We're just gonna take one of our starts We're just gonna take one of our starts here, stick that in, and carry on. We have beets growing really well, starting to form their bulbs, and some onions and things up there. Okay, so we have a lot of food jammed up in a small space, so I need to do some harvesting here for sure. There's more baby greens I can harvest tonight. Some parsley. It's got a little yellowing on it. When I see this kind of stuff, it's telling me this needs more space. So this one was in the nursery here. Oh, actually, this one was transitioned from outdoors to indoors, and it's just not looking that great. So what I can do, and it also was way seeded too much. I purchased this from somebody over the summer, and way too many seeds for parsley. They don't do well when you heavily seed them like that. So we're gonna take that out. I've got new parsley started, so I'll just add that to my salad so it's not wasted. Up here we've got, you know, I like to come through the towers and just clean them up when I see things that aren't looking amazing. Some of my Mizuna has been drying and not being super fantastic this round. So I may take a break from the Mizuna and just switch back to arugula for a little bit. And these are some more of that Samson seeded lettuce that's so gorgeous. It's normally limey like that. That's the normal color. Here's some more of the Salanova lettuce. I don't know what this is. I can't remember. I can't remember what this plant is, so I need to look that up. Very hardy and doing very well. There's actually one over here as well. This is one right here, and it's gigantic. Sorry, the lighting's really bad, but this one's really big. So whatever it is, it likes the climate we have in here. I have bulbing onions. I'm not going to be doing those again inside. I'm actually going to harvest all the onions soon. Down here is a weird beets and tomato combination. Not sure how that happened. And I'm seeing on these cabbage leaves right here a little powdery mildew. And what else do we have? We have some more stinging nettle. We have some lettuce hiding. Look at that. We have more Chiji Masai, more parsley. This one's doing fine. I'm going to make tabbouleh today, maybe. Some turnips that are doing really well up here. So just in abundance, lots of things. But I do need to eat some stuff off this tower. And that's good. We want to be eating off our tower. And the reason is it's really jammed up. And we don't want to overcrowd it too much. Okay, so we can push it, but we don't want to push it too much. And so this right here, I also have the issue of aphids. I'm going to talk about that today. That's powdery mildew. This is my spray. Take a 16-ounce water bottle. I add about a teaspoon of a clean soap. I add 2 lidfuls of pH Plus, and that's it. And I just spray it right on whatever's struggling. So these are cabbage leaves, heavily seeded in a baby greens extension kit. You can totally do that, but I don't want them to get gigantic like they would on a regular grow port. So my options are, I can harvest this today and eat it and juice it. I can let it go a little bit longer. I still have time for it to go a little bit longer on here before it upsets other plants. Or I can move it to a standard grow port. Today, we're about to go out of town. We're going to Chicago. I'm not going to fuss with it because I don't have time for that. The other option, but we can see there's some lettuce hiding back here that hasn't been able to grow. And so we want to make sure all this lettuce is getting enough light. It was hidden underneath the Salanova, so some of these have stayed small. So you just want to go around your tower and unshade things if you're gonna let it overgrow like I am. I have enough. When I get back in town, top priority will be figuring out what this plant is, juicing a lot of this stuff or moving it, harvesting more lettuce, and keep rotating. I do have a Swiss chard right here too. If you ever get in a situation, like I said, I want 1 per rock wool. 2 is okay too. This one's 2, but I can also pull those apart and give them their own rock wool and their own grow port. But this is how it's going. So some things doing amazing. Some things could use a little TLC, lots of food to eat, and we have lots of seedlings to plant. And because this has powdery mildew, I'm gonna go ahead and spray any of the cabbage. That's the only thing on this tower that's going to suffer from powdery mildew. All right, let's go take a tour of the other 4 towers, and then I'm gonna show you guys how I manage the aphids. I have a recent way of managing them that I'm really liking and seems to be helping a lot. If you struggle from aphids, if you're growing in a garage, you're probably gonna have them like me because this is not a sealed space and it's just part of growing food. So sometimes we have pests, but we keep going because it's worth it. All right, I'm gonna go a little faster on these or we're gonna be here all day. So I've got some starts on the base. I've got a gorgeous Chijimasai, more purple cabbage. You're gonna see a lot of the same things. My leeks, the ones I cut over the summer, have regrown and they are ready to be eaten. I'm going to eat most of those when I get back in town and just take a break from that until next summer. This tomato, this is all one plant. It starts up here and it goes all the way down. It's gigantic. I won't be doing this again. This one was grown outdoors and it was the only one that survived. I wanted to grow them outdoors so that when I moved them inside, they would instantly start producing. Plan backfired, it did not work. And this one instead never did fruit because the frost got all of the original buds and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't have a lot of, I'm just now starting to get some flowers on it that are going to turn into fruit. So actually this one right here is another tomato. I put that one in last night. So from here all the way up, that's one tomato plant. I don't love it that big because when we go to this tower over here, you're gonna see I have tomatoes that are smaller that are actually producing food already, where this one's big and it's not. I'm not giving up on it yet because I just feel like I'm way committed at this point. And it is fruiting. It's for sure gonna make fruit. I just don't like how big it is for no reason. So, lesson learned. This one is a hanging basket variety. That's why it's so dangly. And it was at the top of this tower, similar to that one up there, but even taller. And I felt like it needed a better spot to be safe. So that one is here. I'm probably gonna put a cage on this tower to manage these because we definitely want to manage them. And then anytime I see bad leaves like this one, just pull them off. The other reason we want a cage is I just put this in here and it's getting shaded. So we want to make sure we don't shade out our other plants. The cabbage is getting a little shaded too, so something to be mindful of. Turnips, green onions. These are some peppers that I pruned to see if they would rebloom, and they are reblooming. Some of the other varieties did amazing with this method. So just trying that out. There's a fennel bulb. Gorgeous giant head of lettuce. You know, you want the big heads of lettuce, you got to give them their own grow port. That's what this one is. I'm just letting it get gigantic. This is a leaf lettuce. There's another one up there. On this side of the tower, we have veil kale, which is a blue kale, some curly kale. This is my stinging nettle, and it is going to flower, and I'm letting it make seeds for me. So I have seeds to plant. We've got some gorgeous beets, leeks, and then here's another pepper. And then here's another pepper that I cut back that is fruiting already. I don't know if you guys can see that. Little babies. So this is like a medium heat pepper. So I'm not sure if it's the best option for every variety. We're just testing that out right now. Okay, this tower. This is a tomato tower with things growing in between it that do well growing in between tomatoes. So down here we've got our Tom Thumb peas. I've had a lot of success with these this round. I'm actually doing 4 seeds per rock wool moving forward just to get the most food possible. But they have been giving me nice little snap peas to snack on. I've got some kale, kohlrabi right here. And it's starting to take shape and make its little kohlrabi cabbage. And then tomatoes galore. Here's some more kohlrabi. And they are forming their little kohlrabi cabbage heads down here. As we go up, we've got kales, more peas, and lots of tomatoes. Here my tomatoes are actually forming fruit. These are the ones I was saying are they're younger. I started them in the garage, kept them in the same climate, and they're doing amazing and way better than the one I transitioned for that tower. So it's better just to, like I mentioned before, get your stuff where you're going to grow it and keep it there. So these are, I'm stuck. These are fruiting. We should have fruit soon. This is a new pea. This one I did 4 per rock wool. There is fruit on this one up here. So lovely. And this tower is just a repeat. So you're going to see peas, kale. I did put a cucumber down here, but I'm about to move that. And then some of these varieties are super dwarfy, are super dwarfs. Like this one right here is very, very small. And so is this one. And it's more of a traditional tomato. This is not a cherry tomato, I don't believe. I think it's a Roma maybe. And then we want to cut off any bad leaves we see like this. But some of these are very micro dwarf, like this one. And this one just doesn't actually look super great. And this one's starting to bloom. It's just really weird and jammed up. All right, and there's an endive up here doing great. And I actually pruned these yesterday. So what you can do, you never want to take off any suckers. So we don't want to prune in between the leaves. There's going to be stems that grow out. Those are the stems that provide us with food. So we don't want to prune those, but you can go in and clean up some leaves to allow breathing space for your plants. So I want to do the same thing that I did with the lettuce. Pull the important stuff out into the sun. We don't want it tucked behind this endive. This endive's huge. When I get back in town, I'll harvest that and put something else there because I don't want to shade my tomatoes. And I can go through and just cut off any leaves that don't look great or that are causing shade issues. Just allow a little better airflow. This tomato here, I have no idea what this is. I'd have to go look in my notes. This is a micro dwarf. Like this is teeny tiny. The roots look amazing, but because this is so small, it is getting shaded out by all these other tomatoes. I'm not going to take many leaves off of this one because there aren't many to take. I'm just going to clean up what's near the rock wool so it doesn't get any disease because it's more moist down there. And we're going to put this somewhere else and kind of get it, let it be its own shining star somewhere because I'm really curious. It's actually flowering. I mean, how funny is that? That is tiny. So let's give this a new home. I don't know where I'm going to, I know where I'm going to put it actually. And let's talk about this tower. This tower is my favorite right now. Okay, so this tower, it's easier if I can just talk and do B-roll. So that's what I'm gonna do. This tower is super fun. We have green beans. I just made a reel on green beans, and there's an abundance of green beans on here. They're so incredible. These green beans were growing outside. They got hot, cold, hot, cold. I transitioned them indoors, and I actually did 4 plants per rock wool. I just moved them together to see what would happen. They have come back and are doing great. So moving forward, I am planting 4 seeds per rock wool now that I know they can thrive like that when growing indoors. Because with green beans growing indoors, you're gonna get these small plants that actually give you quite a bit of fruit. There's 7 just on this one plant. And I've got 4 plants, so that increases our yields. But they're blooming when they're really small, and then they're gonna continue to bloom. There's more flowers on here. And they're going to go through that cycle, and then they're gonna stop. And then they can rebloom again. But when they get to that stopping point, they'll be bigger than this and bushier than this. That is when we probably want to take them out and replace them with new plants, because we don't want to sit and wait on something to go through a dormant cycle and then restart fruiting again, because that can take a really long time. So I am prepared to, I have new green beans ready to go into the tower. So as these burn out, when I feel like they're just not producing anymore, then I can replace them. So you might be used to green bean bushes that get really bushy and give you like 2 flushes. It's a little bit different indoors. It kind of comes in a rolling stage indoors, and then when it's done, it's done. But these are doing amazing. This is another pepper plant that I cut back completely that was outside, and it is producing peppers. These are my aloe. I made a video with you guys about these. They were completely destroyed in the cold. I had left them outside, and so I moved them all into one grow port to allow them time to heal and to establish really strong roots. I've got 2 of those going, and then I'm gonna pull them apart and give them their own grow port eventually. Right now, they're super happy. They actually grow in clusters like this, so they like to be like this. And I can tell, first off, they're warm to the touch because this tank has a heater in them, and they are full of incredible healing gel for the body. This is why I'm growing them. And I can feel they're all stable. They used to be super wobbly because they didn't have a good root structure. So they're happy. I'm going to give those a little bit longer, and then I'll start to break them apart. But aloe, grow it indoors. Unless you're outdoors and you're warm weather, grow it in warm weather outdoors. Over here I have a pepper. I also recently got the question why I can grow all this food and some people can only seem to grow greens. When you're growing indoors, if you grow the things I mentioned and grow here, you can grow indoors. You have to be able to problem solve sometimes. So we're kind of going through some of that stuff, like moving that tomato if it's not getting enough light and so on and so forth. If you're trying to grow all this variety of food outdoors, you have to know your growing season and grow within your growing season. It's important. We're not going to be able to grow healthy squash in the dead of summer in somewhere like Florida where it's really hot and humid. You have to grow squash when squash wants to grow in that region. So you may need to find a book or find a website or somewhere that really talks about when to plant certain things in your growing zone and follow that. We have grace with these towers, and that we can typically start things a little bit earlier than it says, and we can go a little bit longer than it says on our zone guides, but we still have to be growing in the season if we want success with tomatoes and peppers and all of the other types of produce when we're growing outdoors. For growing indoors, grow these foods, you'll be fine. So here we have a Chinese, this is I think this is called amaranth, which is a Chinese spinach. It's so incredible. This plant is absolutely gorgeous. I've got kales. I have my Napa cabbage that's doing really well. This is one of the ones that did transition and is doing well. My eggplant, my moringa is looking really sad, and my cucumber is looking terrible. And with cucumbers, it's got a good root system. I hate to toss it. I'm gonna toss it. It's already trying to produce fruit. Feel those little flowers? That means it's stressed. We don't want that. And it's got powdery mildew. So I went ahead and sprayed it just so the spores die in the trash can. So we don't want our plants to fruit that young. With this, we do with green beans because we want to get the fruit off of it as fast as possible. And it'll keep, it's just the nature of a green bean will kind of bloom and keep fruiting as it grows. With a cucumber, these only give you about 20 cucumbers per plant, this variety. And so if it's already putting out 6 flowers, is what I'm counting on here, when it's this teeny tiny sickly thing, we're not going to get food off of this. This is not something we can save. So I'm going to throw this in the trash. And because my trash is indoors and I'm not going to take it out today probably, I'm just spraying everything that was exposed to that powdery mildew. Spray the tower down a little bit. There's a little powdery mildew. There's a little powdery mildew on this squash. Totally normal for indoor growing. We're going to put our tomato in there. And now our tomato can have lots of light. And we'll see what we get off of this cute little thing. Okay, so the rest of this tower is some eggplant that I cut and let regrow. Not sure if that was a good idea yet, but we're trying it. Rosemary, lavender, and more squash that is blooming. And with cucumber, what I have found is it's actually better to get it into the tower when it's super, super young before it gets its first true leaves. It seems to be transitioning better. I usually say the opposite, but with cucumbers, I'm finding that they like to go in younger. I may even start just seeding them directly into the tower. They are not handling, I have found this year for me, they are not handling any kind of transition very well past that infant stage. All right, and before we move on to our last tower, what if you get brown tips on your lettuce? We see this. I have some thoughts about what it is, but no proof. If it's happening to big plants like this, they need to come out of the tower. They've reached their peak. I talk about that peak, and then we start to go on the decline. That's what's going on. This one doesn't have it. Sometimes it happens on these baby ones, and I just ignore it and move forward. And I have found it happens on the limey green things the most. So my suggestion, if it's small like this, I've got some brown tips, just don't really worry about it much and keep going forward. If it's on a large plant, that is your cue that your plant is ready to be harvested. We have a lot of the same things. So we've got our blue veil kale. I'm gonna put some of these in my salad today. Look at that. So gorgeous. We've got Mabuna. This Mabuna, it's the same thing. It's a little bit crispy and dried. I don't know if these were outside and moved inside. I'm thinking that's what happened because I have some Mabuna that's gorgeous. So we may need to just try again. And I'll juice the good parts of this and just see what happens. Next time, we've got lots of beets. We've got parsley, chijimusai, lots of turnips going in, fennel bulb, kohlrabi, cilantro, lettuce, baby greens. All right, guys, so we're gonna do our last chore. Then I'm gonna get these tanks. My daughter's dancing behind the camera. Then I'm gonna get these tanks filled with water and loaded up. But this is a new tool I found. I deal with aphids because we grow inside, and I have found this to be extremely helpful. This, and I'll put a link to everything I mentioned below. My hands are orange from messing with the tomatoes, and my fingers are green from messing with the lettuce. So this side blows, and then there's other parts to this. These are the only two I use those though typically, and this one sucks. So it's a vacuum, and I have found this really helpful because you can get into tight places where the aphids like to hide inside these little inner parts of the plant. But mostly what I do is I take this blower and I'm gonna take a spray and spray the base of my tower. And I put a nice thick layer. Make sure not to spray anything on your plants. I found, aside from water, spraying your plants doesn't work and actually causes a lot of harm. So I'm doing that so that as aphids fall, they get collected there, and then I'm just gonna wipe them up. And then I'm just gonna go through and look where they're at. They don't mess with beets, so I'm not worried about the beets. You wanna And I'm going from the top down, and it actually helps get some of these not so great dead leaves off of the tower too, which is nice. Like this Mabuna. I'm not even gonna try and save that. It looks terrible. I have new starts. We can cut our losses and put something else there. And what's nice about this too is if I see them, you know, they like to hide under, I can brush them and blow at the same time. And so we're just kind of blowing everything down. And I have been doing this like every 3 days to each of my towers, and it's worked great at keeping the pressure really low. The key is go where they're hiding, and then if you need to go back in, and I can see there's some in this Chijimusai and the really tight spaces, they like to go right where the plant blooms, like grows its leaves. And is it a pain that I have to do this? Yes, but it's important to remember we're still gardening. I'm growing tomatoes and peppers and so much abundance of food indoors while there's snow on the ground outside, out of season. You know, there is work involved, and this is actually way more enjoyable and way less work than I ever had to pour into. Way less work than I ever had to deal with my soil gardens. So I just tried to remind myself of that when I have to do these little cleanups. And for me, it's actually quite rewarding. I get to come out here and put on a good podcast and clean my towers and put eyes on all my food and harvest things for dinner and put new seedlings in and repeat the cycle over and over and over again. And so if you do have to deal with aphids, don't be discouraged. It's totally doable. We just have to wrap our minds around it and not let the little things in gardening defeat us, because we are still growing food, which requires work on our part. Okay, I'm just gonna do my powdery mildew spray on some of these. I blew everything off. I'm just doing the cabbages because that's what's showing signs. And did I get every single aphid? Probably not, but it's okay. It just gets it back under control. And then I'm gonna wipe the rim and clean up the mess. And now it's fresh, feels good. I've got some empty grow ports, some extra food to eat, so we're gonna fill those up. All right, let's check the pH. And I just use the Tower Garden set. When I buy pH Plus to make my powdery mildew spray, it comes with these. So that's really great. We're going to take 5 milliliters. So it got really cold, which is actually really bothering my injury in my hand. So I'm going to finish up here. Fill these towers probably when I get back in town. The house, there's people staying in the house, so don't have to worry about my starts. They can be kept alive. Even though they're big, they can continue to grow. But let's check this pH. Okay. We had 5 drops, and yeah, it's high. Hold on. Okay, I have a color chart over there. It's in the 7.5 range. That's higher than I typically am. I usually like it to be 5.5. But everything's growing fine, so I'm not gonna mess with it. I mean, I'm gonna check this one. This one is zucchini, and we do like this one to be in the 7 range if possible. And what a difference those heaters make. That water is so warm. That one is icy cold. Okay, let's see. This one's right at 5.5. No, yeah, that one's right at 5.5. So this one, a little bit higher pH. No idea why. Same thing's going to both of them. I'm not going to mess with any of them. Just curious, since I say I never check them. I just thought I would show you guys how to check them if that's a new concept. I don't do it a whole lot unless I see there's issues. I'm not going to adjust them or anything. Definitely not when I'm about to go out of town. I'm just going to let it be. Joining me, guys, on another video. Sort of a all things tower gardening garden tour. See you on the next one.